I'm screen recording this myself. I'll upload it myself. Okay, I don't need you guys to screen record it. I'm screen recording it right now, so I think I'll be just fine. If you guys want to screen record it, it's totally up to you guys, okay? Um, like I said, I'm gonna be updating you guys on the coronavirus, my predictions, what's going on, and I'm also going to be answering a bunch of misconceptions that are going on. So yeah, like I said, I'm just waiting. Give me like maybe another 30 seconds and I'll start. What a lovely background to have, right? It's almost as if it's symbolism. Ready? Did I just wake up? No, I'm just always tired. I'm tired of everyone's bullshit. Anyway, okay. So before I get into the update for the coronavirus, I want to update some of the not update. Go on some of the misconceptions that is going on right now. So there are so many people that it's as if I didn't even tell you guys about this in my last video. In my last video, I mentioned a whole bunch of misconceptions that people in society are giving out, like how black people can get the virus, or how like this virus was done by Trump to win the election. Like this has nothing to do with Trump. This has nothing to do with the elections. This has nothing to do with any of that stuff. This has nothing to do with money. Has nothing to do with anything. Okay, this has to do with lowering down the human population, scaring everyone half to death, locking everyone inside of their houses, then bringing in the military and using that to in place martial law and enslave society forever. And that's basically what's happening. I've predicted every little step of this coronavirus, and it's been happening exactly how I said it. I actually want to start being wrong because now it's starting to even creep me out. And when I start getting a little bit worried, that's how I know that things are becoming a problem. A misconception I keep seeing is that people keep saying that this virus is a distraction and it's actually 5G making everyone sick. This has nothing to do with 5G. There are countries in this planet that do not even have 5G, but yet they have coronavirus cases. So, like, especially the Middle East. The Middle East doesn't use 5G, but yet a lot of people in the Middle East got infected. So this has nothing to do with 5G. Now I'm going to get to a prediction that I mentioned on Twitter, and I'm going to tell you guys this now. They will shut the internet off on society. They're going to, like, as the days go by, you're going to have, like, corporations or on Twitter or stuff making, like, warnings saying, hey, everyone's home using the internet. Maybe you guys should chill out. We can't handle the burden of everyone using the internet at the same time. That's total bullshit. They just want to shut off the internet so that they can, one, control the information that's being spread, and two, they want to shut off the internet so that they can make everyone panic. Because here's why the internet is so important right now. Not just because of the information and because of that it's connecting everyone together, but it's also for peace of mind. Right now, people, even though they're taking this virus very seriously, they don't mind it that much staying home, even though they're bored, because at least if you're home, at least you have access to the internet. You know, you're using your computers, you're playing video games, you're on Netflix, you know, you're on YouTube, you're distracting yourself. But what happens if they turn off the internet? If they turn off the internet, society doesn't know what to do. Society won't know how to react. They won't know what to do with themselves. They won't know why the internet turned off. They won't know what the hell is going on. They won't be able to keep themselves updated on anything. And they will not be able to distract themselves from what's going on. And when people realize that they don't have anything to do at their homes because they're locked inside and that they don't have the internet, there's nothing that they can do, especially because television now is connected to the internet. So if you take down the internet, you also take down television. So now that people can't use their phones, they're not going to know what to do themselves. And now you're going to have people panicking and you're going to have people stepping outside. So if you combine removing the internet away with also keeping people locked in, and then next thing you know, the virus keeps spreading and then the resources start to dwindle down, you're literally setting up society to destroy themselves because people will not want to be contained. People are not going to want to be locked up, and they are going to step outside. And when you step outside in these types of moments, what do you get? Riots. And this connects to the second thing I mentioned, which was I made a prediction that the governments are going to start releasing prison inmates out of jail cells, and they're going to use the excuse that the prison can't keep all of these prisoners inside of jail cells because of the coronavirus, because having a whole bunch of criminals locked in a building is not good, because if one person gets sick, they're all gonna get sick. So they're going to use this as an excuse to not release them, but like move them out into different areas in the public, into their own like little buildings. And they are going, and a lot of these prison inmates are going to escape intentionally. The government is going to let them actually escape. And it actually reminds me so much of the movie The Purge, because in The Purge, the majority of the murderers and killers weren't actual normal people in society. They were actually mercenaries or prison inmates, criminals that the government hired and put out into society to make them do all of the killing. It wasn't actually normal citizens that were doing it. So now, the next thing I told you guys was that watch out for when the government decides to bring in the military. Now, the reason why this makes no sense is that Trump said he's bringing in the military, which they did. They called in the military, they called in the Navy, and they called in the National Guard. And this makes no sense whatsoever, because what does the military have anything to do with fighting a virus? When people questioned this, Trump's administration and the government basically said, we're bringing the military in so that they can help us like give out supplies and shit. You know what? Fine. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that that was the truth, which it's not. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Why do they bring in tanks? There are so many videos right now circulating of actual military trucks and military tanks approaching cities like New York City, California, Miami, Texas, etc., Philadelphia. It does not make sense for military tanks to be approaching large cities. What is the tanks going to do? Shoot a missile towards the coronavirus? It does not make sense. It does not make sense at all, which means the government is preparing themselves. They are stationing their military and their weaponry to fight two things. Either A, to fight society when everyone society decides to revolt once resources start to dwindle, or B, this virus activates stage 4. Now, a lot of you guys, if you guys follow me, you already know about this because I've explained to you guys this months ago. So majority of the public doesn't know what I'm about to say. The coronavirus, that was when it was created by, first of all, the Bill Gates Foundation and the Chinese governments, they put a patent on it so that no one can steal it. And this virus has 4 stages. So you have of the flu. It's basically flu-like symptoms. The second stage is your lungs start to collapse and your lungs basically start to break down on you, that's what actually starts to kill people. Now, the next 2 stages is stage 3 and stage 4. So stage 3 is mass hallucinations. Like, you basically can't control yourself anymore. You just start hallucinating everything, and you look like you're a person that's on drugs. And stage 4, which, as of what I know, hasn't been activated yet, and that is cannibalistic properties. And that is very, very eerie. Why would world elite governments engineer a virus to have cannibalistic properties, basically meaning to eat other humans? It does not make sense for them to engineer that into this strain. So I'm not saying a zombie apocalypse is going to happen, but we could have a moment where a large portion of society gets infected with something that kind of looks like the rabies virus, and it just spreads around to everyone. This would also explain why 1,400 CEOs resigned before the coronavirus broke out. 1,400 billionaires left. Now, here's another thing that I want to discuss. Speaking about billionaires, I have a connection with someone that controls the air traffic control in America. So what he does is he basically monitors all of the planes that are going and coming around the American continent. And what's so interesting is that he told me that there are about 1,400 private jets that are owned by billionaires, right? Now, between January and now, 1,307 of those private jets have left the country, and they all went to around New Zealand and Australia, around that location. And the reason why that's so interesting is that New Zealand is a very interesting piece of land because 1, it's secluded from the rest of the world. 2, it's the closest landmass to Antarctica. And 3, what's so interesting is that back in March, the New Zealand, the government of New Zealand actually had to ban billionaires from purchasing land in New Zealand. So much land was purchased in New Zealand in 2010 by private like citizens that the New Zealand government actually had to put a cap on it and stop anyone else from buying land in their country. So you have to ask yourselves, why did all of these billionaires suddenly start buying out all of the land in New Zealand way before the coronavirus happened back in 2019? It's very eerie. Now, the fact that all of them took their private jets and went to New Zealand is also very suspicious. A lot of celebrities and politicians also went to Australia and New Zealand. And like I said, it's also the closest location to Antarctica. Now, something I need you guys to understand is that when I'm telling you guys stuff like this, when I ask a question like why would all of these billionaires move to New Zealand, I already know the answer. I just can't physically tell you guys in a blunt way. So I need you guys to just think for yourselves. When I ask questions, it's not because I think you guys know the answer, because that you guys don't. But it's that I want you guys to think for yourselves, okay? Something else I wanted to discuss is China. So if you look, there's a website that shows all of the coronavirus cases in the world. Like, if it doesn't show everyone that's infected, it shows everyone that's been tested that's been infected. Now, China has been stuck at 81,000 for the entire month of February and March, of 81,000 people infected. It's never been moved. It's literally just been stuck at like low 80,000s for 2 months, which makes no sense. If you look at like the graph for the amount of people in China that's infected, it goes up and then it just suddenly goes sideways. Like instantly, after like 1 day, it just goes sideways. This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Either A, China completely got rid of the virus within 5 minutes, or B, that they are lying about the number of people in their nation that's infected and they have not updated the number. Now, reason why that's interesting, and I do think they're not updating the number, is that you know how like in America we have multiple phone service companies like Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, stuff like that? China doesn't live in a capitalistic society like that. In China, there's one company that owns all of the, like there's just one phone service, there's one internet service, there's one television service. They don't have multiple companies. So the one phone service that exists in China, they lost about 8.1 million users between the months of February and March. And the reason why that's interesting is because February and March is the exact same time that the Chinese government stopped updating the number of coronavirus victims that existed in China. But at the same exact time, the Chinese phone company lost 8.1 million users between the month of February and March. AKA, if 8.1 million people died, then they're not users anymore. That means that they're not using their cell phones. And that's something that's very eerie. That means that China knows that this virus is actually going to kill millions of people and they're not telling anyone about it. Neither is the American government. All the other governments are not going to tell society about this. And that's something that's very scary. That's something that's very eerie, and people are not realizing this. Also, Tom Hanks' son came out on social media with an Illuminati tattoo on his chest, saying how if you talk shit about the government or try to expose them, that you're going to be the first one sent to a FEMA camp. So that's going to be very interesting. Nice of him to tell us, right? I don't know. Questions? What is a FEMA camp? A FEMA camp is a government institution where they come in during a natural disaster or an epidemic or something, and they build like these pop-up hospitals, like these like fake hospitals, where people can just walk in and they can get medical supplies and be treated. The issue though with FEMA camps is that there's this entire conspiracy that the people that own FEMA camps are actually kind of evil, and that they actually want to use this as a moment to like, you know, control society. What's interesting is that as of right now and as of yesterday, Trump is actually not even controlling the country anymore from a legal standpoint. From a legal standpoint, Trump actually signed his power of control to FEMA. I'm not kidding. Go to yesterday's speech and watch it. And if you guys don't even believe me, look at Trump's speech that he gave this morning. Look closely at the pandemonium thing that he's standing on, like the stage that he's leaning on, you know, like that object thing. There's no presidential seal on it. Normally, when a president gives a speech, there's the presidential seal on it, which is basically the American eagle. But now when Trump gives speeches, the seal isn't there anymore. It just says the White House, because Trump is not in power anymore. The ones that are in power right now is FEMA, and that's not cool considering that back during Obama's term, FEMA actually created like 5 million plastic coffins, and they buried it in a private location in middle of America. Now, you guys really need to question yourself. Why would FEMA, back in Obama's term, create like 5 million cheap plastic coffins? There's actually video proof of this. Like, if you guys go on the internet and you search it, unless YouTube removed it, you can actually find this. There's literally millions and millions of plastic coffins just stacked up. Basically, like very cheap plastic coffins that you can just throw a body in and then throw that coffin somewhere else. And it does not make sense for them to have created this. And when people, there was so many coffins that people actually started to like see them when they were like traveling. And when people questioned the government about it, the government just said, don't worry about it. So that's very nice to know. Look, this isn't me fear-mongering. This isn't me to scare you guys on anything. This is me telling you guys the reality of what's going on. The last thing you want to actually do is be scared. You do not want to be scared, because fear is how you control society. If a society is scared, if a society is fearful, they're never going to fight for anything. If there comes to a point where you guys all need to stand up, and your parents and your family and people in the military, that you guys need to stand up. If you guys do not stand up, you are going to lose everything. And no, the world is not ending. I've said this back in 2018. I literally made a tweet in 2018 that said, for people screaming that the world is going to end, it's not. However, this is the beginning of a new era that's being pushed onto society. It's not the end of the world. It's nothing like, something like that. But this is good. We're pushing into a new era, a new way of living, a new relationship between government and society. And this relationship is not going to be a fun one for citizens. This is a relationship where you have no rights, you have no control, you have no authority, and they can do whatever the hell they want in a literal sense. Think of like the Hunger Games. Look, I told you guys to arm yourselves with manual weapons. I literally said learn how to use a sword. I don't care if you have to fight with a bat or a shovel. Just learn how to be resourceful and don't be scared. This is really not that. You can be concerned and not scared. Like, you have to know the difference between them. I will not be taking any vaccine that's for this virus. If they start forcing it on everyone, then you might as well just leave the country at that point. I'm just reading the comments. Can you get the coronavirus twice? It definitely depends on how they engineered it, because the common cold and the flu is actually a type of coronavirus strain. So theoretically speaking, you technically could get the coronavirus twice, but maybe not this strain, maybe a different one. Anything about the UK, anything I say about America is genuinely universal, meaning that most other countries are also going to follow through with it. But America mostly. How long before the Wi-Fi goes out? I'm not going to give a specific date on that. What about schools? I don't expect schools to open anytime soon. I'm being serious. I do not expect schools to open until like next year. And here's something like I said earlier in my last stream. I want to be wrong. Okay, like, I don't want to be right about any of this stuff. I really do want to be wrong about all of this. This is the one prediction I want to be wrong on. Even though I've been right on everything so far, I want to be wrong on it. Someone was asking me about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I was saying how, if you guys, I made a prediction a long time ago that I said Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be the president for a very short time. He's not going to run for president. He's just going to be like the one who takes charge out of nowhere because something happens. So this could be one of those moments. Maybe like Trump gets sick, or maybe Trump and Pence get the coronavirus, and then they can't like lead, and then, the government needs someone to like be the face of leadership, and Arnold Schwarzenegger takes that role. And what's so interesting is that people kept saying, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger can never be president. You have to be born in America. That's not true. I have so many people that keep saying, you have to be born in America to run for president here. No, you don't. You just have to live here for like 20 years and then you're good. But you don't have to be born in America. And that's something that people, like, it bothers me because it shows that no one's, like, even taking 1 second to at least Google it. Like, at least take a moment to read before you say something stupid. It bothers me. Like, when people fight or debate me on topics that they know nothing about, I just want to block you so that you don't even deserve to be informed on what's going on, because you didn't even take 2 seconds to at least do due diligence and read up on about it before you debate with me. China is blaming the American government for this, and American government is blaming China for this, which I said was going to happen. But in reality, they're all in on this, because if this was actually just China doing this and no other country knew about it, it does not explain how the 1,400 CEOs resigned before the coronavirus happened. How did American billionaires know that this was going to happen and yet the government did it? It does not make sense. The government, everyone was in on this. Maybe not the politicians, but the hierarchy of society definitely knew that this was going to happen. They knew that this was going to happen the same way I knew that this was going to happen. What's the difference? Anything about South America and the Middle East. So I made a tweet a while ago that I said, I think South America is actually going to get hit the hardest with the coronavirus, especially places like Brazil and stuff, because they don't have the right infrastructure in place. And a lot of South American countries are owned by gangs. And I know that that's not going to sound right to anyone that's like South American. They might think like I'm offending their country, but I'm not. A lot of cartel actually control the politicians in South American countries. So when this virus spreads out, the cartel is not going to give two shits about how to control this situation. So I really do believe South America is going to be one of the worst places that's going to get hit by this virus. Someone's asking about Israel. I never heard of a country with that name. Are they going to cancel flights soon? Yeah, domestic flights are definitely going to be canceled. Someone's asking about Africa. So the issue with Africa is that Africa doesn't have any medical infrastructure. So like a lot of portions of Africa are not developed. So they're not going to have like the test kits and stuff that all of these other countries have. So as of now, we don't know how many people in Africa are infected because no one in Africa is being tested. Like literally the entire African population right now could have the coronavirus and no one would know because they do not have the infrastructure in place to actually test their citizens to know any statistics. So, yeah. And guys, please, like, when I say things, think bigger. Like, right now, I just said that majority of people in Africa are not being tested because they don't have the right infrastructure. And I know for a fact I'm gonna have that one person in the comments that's like, oh, no, there are people being tested in Africa. And then you look, and it's like 4 people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about the entire continent, and you're talking about 4 people. Do you know what that's called? That's called environmental bias. That's basically when you take information from a very small point of view that you've dealt with personally and you paint a very broad stroke with it. A good example of that is like, let's say a white person is walking in the street and they get beat up by one Chinese person, right? They got mugged by, and the person that mugged them happened to be a Chinese person. Now this white person is gonna say all Chinese people are criminals. Does that make sense? No. But you have people that think like this, and that's called environmental bias. It's when you take one small event and you attach it to everything. How long would this go on? I said this already on Twitter. I think this is going to last months. I'm talking months, maybe well into the late summer. Like I said, I just hope I'm wrong with this. This is not going to leave anytime soon. And what people need to realize is it doesn't make sense for it to leave. Billionaires would not flee the country if this was going to leave. The stock market would not crash on a global scale if this was meant to leave. The CEOs resigning and stuff would not have done that if this virus was meant to leave. This virus is here to stay. We are only at the very beginning stages of it. It's going to get a lot worse, especially around mid-April. Mid to late April, I fully expect at least 1 million people in America to be infected by this virus. It's going to get a lot worse than it is now, and that's something you guys need to really trust me on. That's something I can guarantee you. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna end this stream. There's really nothing else, you want me to say. By the way, for anyone that watched my last video stream, which is now on YouTube, you know how I talked about the typewriter symbolism? How like Madonna, Tom Hanks, and stuff, they were all showing typewriters on their social media. What's interesting is that, you know how I always talk about the correlation between the Resident Evil zombie franchise and the coronavirus? Do you know how you save your progress in the Resident Evil game? You run to a typewriter. Let that sink in for a moment. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say, and I'll see you guys in update number 3 when I feel that it's necessary. And yes, the picture behind me is a lot more suitable and